We are completely shocked, unbelievable.
Later, Arafat was seen giving blood in a symbolic gesture of solidarity with America. Arab allies, the Iranian president and even Libya have strongly condemned what happened, saying that it violates Islamic principles. But on the streets of all these countries, anti-Americanism has been building. Moderates are being eclipsed by extremists after almost a year of violence in the Middle East, the Palestinian Intifada in Israel. We don't wish for the destruction of the American people, says this man. We just want the destruction of Bush and the U.S. Congress because they support Israel. Experts in radical Islamic terrorism say masterminds like Osama bin Laden have cleverly manipulated a real sense of grievance into a willingness by some to become human instruments of mass murder.
Osama bin Laden has been in the Muslim world. Has been capitalizing on very sensitive issues that mobilize the whole Arab and Muslim community. The liberation of Jerusalem, American troop presence in Saudi Arabia, of course the fate of the Iraqi people suffering under sanctions.
This gathered momentum after the Gulf War, when bin Laden bitterly complained about U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia. Troops invited by Saudi leaders to defend against the Iraqis, and yet condemned by bin Laden and extremist Islamic preachers for, quote, desecrating holy sites. In addition, Muslims all over the world have been enraged by a decade of continued bombing against Iraqi military installations and crippling sanctions that have ended up hurting the Iraqi people much more than their intended target, Saddam Hussein and his regime. Experts say terrorism cells manage to operate in America's Arab allies, such as Egypt and Saudi Arabia, as well as Europe and North America. Fearful of a backlash, mainstream Muslim leaders here in Europe are trying to explain that this war on American civilians is a crime that can never be justified as a religious duty.
The position of the Muslim community in the UK, as I'm sure in different parts of the world, is very clear. We condemn utterly and unequivocally the atrocities that has been committed. We believe that the people, the perpetrators of this heinous crime are outside the pale of civilization.
So now, British and other world leaders are calling for a global alliance to combat a global network of terrorism, to arrest them cell by cell, shut down their financial support, and make it more difficult to forge travel documents. There are no quick fixes, they say, just a long, sustained, and difficult campaign. Christiana Manpour, CNN, London.
The President of the United States, flanked by his predecessors, other dignitaries in the nation, leading a nation in sorrow on a day of remembrance and of prayer.
And under heavy security, President Bush sees firsthand the utter devastation unleashed by terrorists in New York City. He's greeted by cheers of USA, USA.
Taking a step toward waging war against terrorism, the House of Representatives joins the Senate in approving $40 billion in emergency spending to help victims and to hunt down those responsible for Tuesday's attacks. Welcome back to CNN's continuing coverage of the events surrounding Tuesday's terrible tragedies across the United States. Much of the story that will be underway in the coming days is the economic one, the impact on the U.S. economy, indeed the world economy. Joining us to talk more about that now, CNN's Lou Dobbs of Moneyline. Lou.
Joy, thank you very much. In New York, the president today inspected the devastation and the rescue efforts underway in downtown New York City, because for all that it is, ground zero, the devastated World Trade Center complex, it is, in point of fact, the battleground, the first battleground in what the president has termed America's new war. The president today visiting the scene of the terrorist attack on America, the worst attack ever. The president has called Tuesday's terrorist act an act of war. A war, he said, not of our choosing. The conflict, he said, began and the timing and terms of others, but Mr. Bush said it will end in a way and at an hour of our choosing. The president made his way through the still smoking rubble here in New York, and he came with words of sympathy for the families of victims. He came with words of appreciation for the rescue workers who continue to search for survivors and victims, and he came to reassure a shaken public of this nation's strength and its resolve.
America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Martin Savage is at the rescue site now and has more on the story. Martin.
Well, we're in the area of Reed and Greenwich Street. That is about 3.5 blocks north of the World Trade Center, or at least where the World Trade Center used to be. In the background, the cloud of smoke he mentioned still billowing high into the sky, replacing ones where those twin 110-story towers stood. This is a vital checkpoint of getting in supplies, getting in critical material that is supporting the rescue effort, the ongoing search for survivors. Sadly, there were no reports of any survivors being pulled from the rubble today. And in fact, there have been fewer reports of even contact with anyone that may still be alive. That hasn't dimmed the hopes. Weather was the biggest problem today. It was stormy in New York overnight. It was wet and windy and cold in New York when the sun came up. It made the job of the rescuers very difficult, very slippery, very treacherous. Those literally digging with their hands on the debris pile that now stands about 100 feet tall. On top of that, it was the winds that was also a concern. Towering over their heads are at least 3 buildings that are thought to be critically unstable, that could come down. They weren't sure if they could take the wind loads. They are still standing now. They are still digging now. Then came the President of the United States. It was critical to the White House that his visit not disrupt the search for survivors. It did not. But he did go around shaking hands, congratulating those that were working on the job and telling them that they are heroes and they have inspired a nation. He shook about 400 hands, and according to those who were there, they say they liked what the president had to say. After he left, well, the cordon off area where we stand now has begun to resume some normalcy. They want to get back to work, not just to support the effort to find survivors. They're trying to get this area, the financial district, back online. Monday's a critical day. Power is still out. Communications disrupted. They worked all day on that effort, which is also critical as well. And finally, sailing up the Hudson River at this very moment, the U.S. hospital ship Comfort. It will bring comfort and supplies and critical medical supplies to this area that right now could use all the help it could get. Lou?
Martin, thank you very much. Martin Savage. As Martin just said, Wall Street is working mightily to prepare for an opening of the stock market on Monday morning. That is a difficult and arduous task by any standard. Those workers struggling to restore telecommunications, putting those phone lines back up and getting them running, essential to the return of the markets. Computer technicians are working hard. Over the weekend, they are scheduled to be testing software and hardware and communications. Everything from lights to running water must be restored, and it must be checked. Not to mention the actual stability of several of those endangered buildings. From that rubble, Wall Street's key financial institutions are determined to rise and to be fully operational, if not fully recovered, by 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time Monday. Greg Clarkin is here now and has more for us on that part of the story. Greg?
And Lou, this tragedy really has brought together rival exchanges, and they're all working now with the one common and one shared goal of restoring trading by 9:30 Monday morning. They washed away the dirt and the grime, hoping to cleanse Wall Street of the remnants of the attacks on the World Trade Center. But inside the New York Stock Exchange, the challenges to restoring trading ran deeper. There are monumental telecommunications obstacles, including making sure electric and phone service will be intact. And then there is the main issue, making sure the sophisticated network that handles the trades for the NYSE can be processed.
The challenge is recreating the network, the interconnected infrastructure that brings 85 million investors individually and another 10,000 institutions from all over the world.
The New York Board of Trade was located in the World Trade Center complex. It will have a new facility come Monday.
Well, the major issue is we have to make sure that all of our clearing members are able to receive the trades and to clear them. It's one thing to trade, but if you don't match them and clear them, you've got a serious problem.
All of the trading exchanges will be undergoing extensive testing this weekend to spot potential problems.
I mean, we've got to make sure we have adequate power, we have adequate access to downtown, and that we have the telecommunications capability necessary to carry all of this.
Now, the New York Stock Exchange already has stringent security measures in place. They will be upgraded even more, and this goes for tourist employees, just about everybody there. And Louis Dick Grasso, the CEO of the NYSE, said he instructed his security force, if Dick Grasso were to arrive without the proper ID, send him home.
That is all well and good and appropriate. How realistic is it that we can see this stock market, as represented by the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ, open for business Monday? I know they're making a heroic effort. What would you rate the odds at right now?
I think pretty good, Lou. After being down there today and speaking with Grasso and some of the other heads of the various exchanges, they are adamant that they believe they will have trading up and running, speaking with Verizon, handling the telecom side of it. They say they believe they will have service. The question really is the level of service that will be available. And right now they'll be working through the weekend, spot checking things, looking for potential problems and any bugs.
And of course, there are a number of reasons, not the least of them the symbolic reason to restore the world's largest equity market to trading after this vicious act of terrorism. But the fact is that the world economy depends on these markets. The New York Stock Exchange accounting for some $13 trillion in market capitalization, that market alone dwarfing all of the other exchanges in the world, whether Tokyo, whether Frankfurt, or London. Greg, thank you very much. Well, when those markets do resume trading, there is, of course, some fear amongst many that a big sell-off might occur. Christine Romans has been taking a look at the implications of that possibility and has the report for us. Christine Romans.
Lou, it will be normal trading hours here on Monday, but anything but a normal trading day. The opening bell will ring at 9:30. There'll be 2 minutes of silence, and then New York's financial community will try to swallow its pain and trade stocks. Many fear a sell-off soon after the bell. There's the uncertainty lingering after Tuesday's terror attack, and now signs of the economic fallout. Ford will shutter several North American plants and said third-quarter earnings will fall more than expected. Disrupted freight service has caused a parts shortage there, so there will be a short shuttering of some plants. General Electric warned World Trade Center-related losses at its reinsurance company will cost GE 4 cents a share in the quarter, and some analysts fear the economy will tip into recession.
Undoubtedly, even before Tuesday, the economy was precarious. Consumers were getting nervous. Their debt was very high. They were seeing higher unemployment figures and mass layoffs. And the global economy also was not in all that healthy a position.
A week ago, the Standard & Poor's 500 closed at a 3-year low, and pundits were searching for any sign of economic recovery. Still, there is hopeful talk that corporate buybacks could counter any selling on Monday. Also, Lou, players are reporting a so-called gentleman's agreement to limit short sales. After 4 days of no stocks trading, no one's really sure how markets are going to react, but many players are very quick to note that the initial reaction could be violent, but prices tend to smooth out from there over the next few weeks. Lou?
And of course, we saw that violence in overseas markets immediately following the tragedy at the World Trade Center. But the fact of the matter is we're also seeing a lot of economic signs that suggest some tempering of immediate reaction, aren't we, Christine? Retail sales for the month of August, just as all of the pundits and gurus and savants were suggesting this economy is going into recession, suddenly we see retail sales move higher in August.
And there are analysts who are saying be careful about getting too far ahead on the downside, because maybe if we are here at the bottom of the economy, you could be hurting yourself longer term.
And there is another factor at work here, and you alluded to it, Christina, a gentleman's agreement, if you will, amongst the major firms.